All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It was a Sunday evening, September 8th of last year, in Auburndale, Florida. And it was at that time that the defendant viciously and savagely unleashed his full fury and hatred towards his mother upon her, when he stabbed her with such force that the knife went shooting through her neck muscles, through her esophagus, through her trachea, through her thyroid cartilage, and shot out the other side of her neck. You will hear and see that as this happened, she began to bleed, and bleed profusely through the huge gash in her neck. While she bled, the defendant was there and watched as the blood came out of the huge hole in her neck. You're going to hear that he was there as he watched the blood and the life drain from her body until she took her final breath and was officially dead. You're also going to hear that this was exactly what the defendant meant to do, and that this is exactly what the defendant had thought about doing and had wanted to do for quite some time. So much so that he told multiple people, including multiple Charlotte County Sheriff's Office deputies and his own grandfather, the father of the defendant's mother, Collin Griffith. His name's Robert Willantis. You're going to hear from him. He'll fly in from New Mexico, and he'll tell you about those haunting statements that the defendant made. And you're going to see that exactly what the defendant said he wanted to do and said that he would do, he accomplished on the night of September 8th of last year. But how did Collin Griffith get there, bleeding out on her mother's kitchen floor? In order to understand that, we're going to have to take a step back and take a walk through some time. So you're going to see, of course, not just what happened on and around September 7th and September 8th, some of the critical time leading up to the murder, but you're also going to see and hear how this all began. Now, we're going to take a trip back to February 14th of 2023, the year prior to the defendant killing his mom. At that time, the defendant lived in Oklahoma. And you're going to hear on February 14th of 2023, the defendant killed somebody else when he shot that person 2 times. He shot that person in the chest, and he shot that person in the head. You're going to hear that it was undisputed that he shot that person, that he was arrested for that killing, and that he has not been charged to this date. Now, after that killing, ladies and gentlemen, the defendant, as a little bit of time progressed, he moved back to Florida. He had been living with his dad for a number of years in Oklahoma, approximately 3 years or so. While he was living in Oklahoma with his dad, his mom lived in Florida in some different places, but including Port Charlotte most recently. And you're going to hear that while the defendant lived with his dad, the mom, as any mom would, greatly missed her son. And she didn't get an opportunity for different reasons, including a very controlling dad that the defendant was living with. So Collin Griffith basically didn't have much contact with her son, not because she didn't want to, but she would try to call him and talk to him, and it pained her greatly that her son was not with her. You're going to hear that there's another brother, an older brother. He really doesn't have much to do with this case, but nonetheless, there was an older brother who lived with his mom, Kathy, for a period of time before he moved out of the house when he was old enough. So, as the defendant moves to Florida, his mom wanted to make up for lost time. That was 3 years, 3 critical years of her life and his life when they didn't do mother-son things. They didn't spend time together. They didn't have all those opportunities that maybe other kids and other parents had. So
he watched the blood and life drain from his mother on her kitchen floor. Very descriptive, very disturbing right out the gate. We have to hit the pause button. You're not going to miss anything. Coming up, we're going to head back to Florida for more opening statements in the deadly son murder trial for Collin Griffith. This is Court TV Live.
Grieving widow or mastermind behind a murder.
Monica Cementelli is accused of plotting to kill her husband.
Famed celebrity hairstylist Fabio Cementelli.
Prosecutors say she and her lover killed Fabio to collect a big life insurance policy.
The defense may say she's a bad woman, but she wouldn't be involved in a murder.
It's a whodunit Hollywood story, but will there be a twist that no one sees?
The celebrity stylist murder trial, today, only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Matt Johnson. This hour, we are in the state of Florida for opening statements in the deadly son murder trial, where 17-year-old is charged in the kidnapping and first-degree murder in connection to the stabbing death of his mother last September. Collin claims that he acted in self-defense, saying his mom fell on a knife during a fight in the kitchen. Months before that, the teenager was charged for shooting and killing his father in Oklahoma. Those charges were officially dropped after prosecutors couldn't prove that that shooting was an act of self-defense. Let's get you back into court now. Assistant State Attorney Mark Levin is delivering his opening remarks.
So Kathy, the defendant's mom, tried to make up for lost time. And she took her son on multiple vacations. They took cruises. They went to Disney World. They traveled out of the country. They went to Washington, D.C., and she spent all her time and affection and money on the defendant. That was her son. And that's who she had missed for all those years. Now, was Kathy Griffith the perfect parent? No. Was she the perfect person? No. But nobody is. But you're going to hear that she gave everything that she had, including her life, to try to take care of the defendant and spend as much time as she could with him, even at the cost of her life, which ultimately is what happened. Now, as the defendant and his mom lived in Charlotte County, in Port Charlotte, they lived in a house, a well-kept house. It was the two of them. And they did plenty of things together. Like I said, they went on vacations, they went to the movies, they hung out. It was just the two of them. So they had nothing but basically one-on-one time. And you're going to hear that Kathy Griffith, like any mom, expected certain things. These weren't off-the-wall, dictator-like things. These were simple things that she thought would be appropriate to teach her son about responsibility and respect. Chores, minimal chores, such as weed whack in the backyard, taking trash and food or candy out of his room, helping her around the house with whatever little odd jobs might happen. But you're going to see in here, the defendant wanted nothing of that. He didn't want to be inconvenienced. He didn't respect his mom. He didn't care about his mom. And wherever this deep-seated anger and hatred came from, it was real within him. And he told people about it. So as the days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months, his anger, as you'll see, was building and building.
Judge, I'm going to object to this being argumentative.
As the time went on, you'll see that the mom had to deal with a lot of issues, including being attacked by her own son. You'll hear a little bit about the defendant being arrested at a certain point for domestic violence battery. He was a juvenile, as he still is a juvenile. And you'll hear that he was put on some probation. But in essence, he was not happy with his mom, so he took her down on the ground and stomped on her hand. But they continued to live together. The mom, you'll hear, was afraid of the defendant and what ultimately might happen to her, and she was afraid he would kill her. But she loved him, and you're going to hear that she wanted to be with him. And she was cognizant of the fact that when he turned 18, he was probably going to leave the house, and that would, for all intents and purposes, end that one-on-one time, and he would continue on with his life however he saw fit. So it wasn't like every day was chaos or bedlam in the house, but the defendant had issues, the mom had some issues, but they were working through them. Now, sometimes they would go to the movies together, sometimes there would be good days, and you're going to actually get to see kind of like an inside peek of some time on September 7th and September 8th, the day that the defendant killed his mom. You're going to see that in the form of Ring camera footage that Kathy had set up inside because she was so afraid of what her son might do to her. And you're going to see that there was cameras set up in different parts that basically captured the same or similar things, but you're going to get to see some footage from a kitchen camera that captures the kitchen as well as into the living room. So you're not going to have to sit through 48 hours or 72 hours of just nothing happening, but you're going to see some clips so you can kind of tell what the vibe was on those last 2 days of Kathy's life. You're also going to get to be able to see the timeline as it continues. We talked a little bit about jury selection, about a timeline, because nothing happens in a vacuum. So as the defendant's living with his mom, he starts making these statements that he wants to kill his mom, and that if he has to go back to his mom, he's going to kill her or do her harm or do himself harm. And he tries to make accusations against his mom that you'll see she was never arrested for anything as it pertains to the defendant. But nonetheless, he starts telling detectives, he starts telling deputies. And so the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office has different units, as does a lot of law enforcement agencies. And you'll hear that they took a proactive approach because they didn't want to see anything bad happen to the defendant, and they didn't want to see anything bad happen to the mom. So you'll hear that there were multiple deputies and detectives that would check in on the family, would check in on mom, would check in on the defendant. And their goal was to try to ensure that both parties got along and that, of course, they lived long, happy lives together. It didn't work out that way, not from a lack of their trying. So as the year continues, the defendant, as I mentioned, got arrested for the domestic violence battery. He got Baker acted a time or two. And when he would be about to be released, he would make statements. Basically, he would say he didn't want to go with his mom. If he went with his mom, he was afraid of what might happen, of his anger, that he would kill his mom. He also made statements that he was afraid that she would do something to him. But the reoccurring theme that you will hear from the witnesses from the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office is that the defendant verbalized what he ultimately did, which is that he would kill his mom. You'll hear from one or more deputies that even asked him, well, how are you going to do that? And he specifically mentioned, sometimes he would mention different things like shoot or stab, but a reoccurring theme was he would mention that he would stab his mom. So the intervention continued with the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office. They would talk to both Kathy on the phone, the defendant on the phone. They were accessible. They would call and check in. They would stop by the house and talk. And the defendant and his mom independently, they had the ability to call the deputies and the detectives as well. Now, 2024, around February 19th or so, around that time, or perhaps a little bit earlier, the defendant sent a text message. He had many communications with an attorney that was
I'm going to object based on we don't know if this is going to be admissible.
Approach.
All right, well, they approach for that bench conference. This is a good time to bring in my guest for this hour. Watching along with you at home, we have trial attorney and former prosecutor Randolph Rice. Randolph, nice to see you, my friend. Thanks for being with us. All right, so we're out the gate. Pretty descriptive and disturbing right out the gate. But the fact that he's talking about how Kathy was scared, had the cameras, he's also making promises for this jury.
Yeah, no, he did a good job. I thought he was a little nervous at the very beginning, but he certainly kind of got into his flow. And what he's doing, Matt, is he's sort of painting a general picture. He's not getting into too deep of the details. For example, when he talks about the knife being in her neck and the blood everywhere, he's not getting into the details that ultimately are going to come out from the witnesses because he doesn't want to get himself locked into that statement, but he's just giving the general overview, which is what you're supposed to do in opening. And so I think he's doing a very good job of sort of painting the picture of this scenario.
What are you watching for as we're in openings? And this is also an unusual case, not only because of the deaths of the parents, but the fact that you have a 17-year-old on trial being tried as an adult.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of different theories about openings and the value that they bring to the jury. You know, a lot of times people say in our profession that the openings really don't have a big effect on the jury because if you have a long trial like this is expected to be, a lot of times the openings get lost and they sort of get forgotten. This is really just an opportunity to sort of say, hey, here's a 30,000-foot view of what you're going to hear. Here's what I want you to pay attention to as we're going along. And I think the prosecutor is doing a very good job of that.
Yeah, you know, they are not evidence. They are just supposed to be the roadmap for this jury there in the state of Florida. All right, Randolph, you are going to stick with us for the rest of the hour. Coming up, we've hit the pause button. More of the opening statements in the deadly son murder trial, where 17-year-old Collin Griffith is on trial for the murder of his mother.
I'm in a constant state of fight or flight, and I don't know. If I think she's gonna do something, even if she's not, I might act. I'm not gonna like go crazy or anything, but I'm not sure, honestly.
Okay. You're not sure if you're gonna hurt?
Only if she tries to hurt me.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. This morning, we are in the state of Florida for opening statements in the deadly son murder trial. Collin Griffith is accused of stabbing his mom to death just months after killing his father. His father's death, however, was ruled self-defense. Let's get you back into court now, where the assistant state attorney is delivering opening statements for the state.
Ladies and gentlemen, continuing on to some of the statements that the defendant made that explicitly forecasted what he did on September 8th of 2024. I mentioned the name Robert Willantis. Robert Willantis, as you'll hear, was Kathy Griffith's father. He's the maternal grandfather of the defendant. You're going to hear that Robert Willantis, of course, had a relationship with his grandson, loved his grandson, cared about his grandson, and still does. And the defendant told him something that was super, super disturbing, to say the least. You will hear from Robert Willantis that the defendant said to him that he wanted to kill his mom and how he was going to do it. And the defendant said, more than anything else, I want to slit her throat and feel her bleed out and feel the life leave her body. That's how much I hate her. You're going to hear that Mr. Willantis, needless to say, was absolutely shocked. And he told his grandson, that's sick, that's twisted, you can't do that. You know, you and your mom have issues and you're going to need to work through those issues. September 7th of last year. The morning started with Kathy buying her son, or letting him use her credit card to buy Starbucks. Bought a couple drinks, a breakfast sandwich, and the defendant came home. And this is going to be some of the ring footage that you see. So you'll be able to see some of these interactions. And you're going to see the mom and the son and some about how they're talking to each other and kind of what happened that day. The mom had minimal requests of the defendant. On that specific day, she wanted her son to help her put up a bookshelf. The defendant didn't want to be bothered. The mom wanted her son to weed whack the backyard. The defendant didn't want to be bothered. The mom wanted her son to clean up the food and the candy that was in his room, attracting ants, but the son didn't want to be bothered. You'll see that he had his Starbucks, he had his sandwich, he wanted to do what he wanted to do, which was he wanted to take a walk, get out of the house and exercise. So the end of the day, or sometime during the day, the end result is that the mom got fed up with him. Kathy was sick and tired of being disrespected, sick and tired of doing everything for her son, and basically told him, get out until you can show me some respect. Well, the defendant had no problem with that because he just wanted to do what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it, so he went to his grandma's house. So that's how the defendant and his mom in Port Charlotte, Charlotte County, how their lives come to Polk County. Because the defendant's grandmother, who is Kathy's mom, her name is Susan Detman. Her and Robert Walantis used to be married back in the day. She had multiple houses, one in the Keys, one in Auburndale, and perhaps one somewhere else too. So the defendant got in his car. It was a nice Volkswagen, black four-door. You'll hear and see that the mom had a white four-door Volkswagen. And the defendant drove to his grandma's house in Auburndale. And you'll see and hear at his grandma's house, he didn't have to put up with his mom asking him to do things, or to be respectful, or to do chores. You'll also hear that during the relationship between Kathy and her son, she got him video games. She got him a phone. She let him use her credit card to fill up, and use his bank card to fill up gas. She provided food. Of course, she provided shelter, clothes. I mean, the basic necessities, but she did more than that. The defendant you're going to hear and see is a very smart individual. He was in high school and was, I believe, taking college courses and had an interest in the law. And you're going to see that he was a fairly smart individual, and he would use that knowledge to try to do certain things. So on September 7th, the defendant leaves. The mom is at home, and the mom's angry. She's not happy. Does she want to hurt Collin or kill him or do anything to him? No. She's mad because she knows that her time with her son is slipping away. He's 17 years old by now. Incidentally, he was almost 16 when he killed the individual in Oklahoma. Now he's 17 years old on September 7th and September 8th. So mom is not happy because he's disrespecting her. He's not doing the chores. She's busting her rear end doing everything for this kid who's ungrateful, and she's mad. But nonetheless, she wants him home. She doesn't want him with her mom. She doesn't want him out running the streets or not knowing where he is. So she continually texts him and calls him. Her only desire is to get him home, not to be mad at him or hurt him or ground him. She's willing basically to bend over backwards, as you'll see from the evidence, to just be with him. That's what she wants, is just time with him. You're gonna get to see through text messages between her and him, her state of mind and what was going on. And the defendant was basically just blowing her off. He didn't want to be aggravated. But you're gonna see kind of the mom was frantic, and once again, frantic in terms of being a mom and wanting to know where her son was and wanting her son back in her house. So she started to give him ultimatums, things that she wasn't gonna follow through on. Some of the things. She was hoping not to have to follow through on any of these things. But you're gonna see that she was saying, if you don't come home, I'm gonna sell your car. If you don't come home, I'm going to cancel your insurance. I'm going to turn off your phone. And she would turn off the phone that she provided for him multiple times. She would turn off his phone. She would take away his computer. All things that she bought. She bought him a computer for his school. She bought him a phone because, of course, that's what parents do. And you'll see when you're a child, you can't get a cell phone with AT&T or have an account with AT&T if you're not 18 or older. So he was relying upon his mom, and happy to do so, because she made sure that he had everything that he wanted. So she was saying these things because basically she was hoping that he would be afraid of them and would come home, but he could care less, as you'll see. But then the Oklahoma killing resurfaces. And you're going to see that besides just pure anger and hatred towards his mom, that his motive, an additional motive for killing her, was what she texted him. Because he was concerned that that Oklahoma killing was going to come back around. Of course, it was still under investigation and still is, but that was going to be reopened. And you're going to see firsthand why the defendant didn't want that to happen and why that just infuriated him even more towards a mom that he hated and couldn't stand for no good reason. You're going to see firsthand that Kathy texted her son between 12 and 12:29, and he received it. And she texted him, Collin, the recordings of you admitting to killing, and then she stated who it was, and planning the murder. There are 4 different instances from my Ring camera, are all going to Bob, Susie, Amanda, and Chris at 3 p.m. today. And mind you, this is the day that he murders her, shortly thereafter. She continues on, plus the recovered audio from Chuck's iCloud. Chuck is the defendant's father, Kathy's ex-husband. So Kathy continues on, plus the recovered audio from Chuck's iCloud where you told your dad you hated me and I was an evil bitch are being sent too. My dad is sending me his recordings of you telling him how you planned my murder back in February. Audio, video, emails, texts, and phone records are all being sent. For the record, no, you cannot have a single one. Your attorney can request them. She continues on, all because you didn't want to help me.
These are powerful words from that prosecutor. Okay, so we need to take a break, but we're going to hit the pause button. Did you notice that we put the clock on your screen there? We're about 6 minutes in. It all comes down to this. We're in verdict watch, 5 years in the making. A jury of 4 men and 8 women deciding the fate of her. Natalie Cochran, will she be convicted of killing her husband? But when we come back, more opening statements in the deadly son murder trial for that 17-year-old accused of killing his mom.
He thinks I'm going to kill her, and I want to kill her.
Do you?
A troubled teen who fatally shot his own father
now stands accused for the murder of his mother.
I'm not a psychopath. I'm not this murderer.
Was it an argument that led to a tragic accident?
Or a fit of rage that ended in cold-blooded murder?
Everybody that's special to him in his life is dead. The Deadly Son murder trial. Live coverage today, only on Court TV.
Powerful opening statements underway in the state of Florida in the deadly son murder trial. Collin Griffith is accused of stabbing his mom to death just 18 months after killing his dad. That death was ruled self-defense. Let's get you back into court now, where the prosecutor is delivering his opening statement.
Bookshelf that took under 30 minutes. Weed eat the backyard and clean your room because bugs were in the candy you had all over. Remember, you chose this. You have 10 minutes to call me and fix this, Collin. When the defendant read that text, his anger level just rose even more. Later that same afternoon, Kathy pressed it even more. And she sent a text to her mom, Susan Detman. And mind you, the location where the defendant had run to was Susan's house, his grandma's house. she was down in the Keys at one of her houses, so Collin had free range of the place. Hey, no rules, nothing to do. He could do whatever he wants to do. Nobody's even there to supervise him. And that's why he would like to go places where there were no supervision. I mean, specifically his grandma's. So Susan was in contact with the defendant because she was driving up from the Keys, and the defendant was staying at the house there. So Kathy texted Susan a similar text message. And she texted her mom, Collin's grandmother, tell Collin the recordings of him admitting to killing, and then she stated who the person was, and planning the murder. There are 4 different instances from my Ring camera are all going to Bob, Susie, Amanda, and Chris at 3 p.m. today. Plus the recovered audio from Chuck's iCloud where Collin told his dad he hated me and I was an evil bitch are being sent too. Dad is sending me his recordings of Collin telling him how he planned my murder back in February. Audio, video, emails, texts, and phone records are all being sent. For the record, no, you cannot have a single one. Your attorney can request them, so can Collin's. You're going to see that afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, in an eerie video, Kathy changes her clothes. I mean, you're not going to see her change her clothes, but you're going to see she appears in the exact clothes that her son would kill her in just mere hours later. And you're going to see that she had on some blue jean shorts. She had on a black t-shirt with a coffee motif. And she had a nice leather purse / backpack over her shoulder. And she left the house. And she was not happy. She was not happy at her mom. She was not happy at Collin. But she had one thing that she wanted to accomplish, which was not to do her son any harm, but to get him home so they could continue being mother and son. So she made the drive from Port Charlotte to Polk County. And you're going to hear that at a certain point, she arrived. Sometime in the ballpark of 5 o'clock, shortly before the defendant would murder her. Now, there were 2 ladies across the street in separate houses, but you have the grandmother's house on one side of the street, and then basically the 2 neighbors that lived across the street from the grandma, two nice ladies you'll hear from, but they both kind of independently saw and heard things. And you're going to hear that at around 5 o'clock, and one of the witnesses, I believe it was Miss Sally Bell, she remembers the time frame because she was about to leave for church.
State's still going there. A lot of details to already take in mind as jurors are first hearing the details of the case. What do you think? Let us know on social media, at Matt Johnson News, at Court TV. Let's find out what our attorney guest this hour thinks. Randolph Rice is watching along with you at home. A lot of details, my friend. Usually we say here on Court TV, keep it short and simple.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that, Matt. I think that's a good point here. But he does hit some of the high points, and I think the big takeaway from this is while it's not an element of the crime, motivation, the motive seems to be the fact that the mother is saying, hey, look, if you don't come back and start being a good son, I'm going to out you. I'm going to tell everybody about the information, the voicemail, the recordings that we have about what you did to your, and they can't say his name, but we know what you did to your father a year ago when you shot him, that it wasn't in self-defense. So that's the motive, what it seems to be, at least the state's idea of what the motive will be in this case, and that's very, very damning to the defendant.
Yeah, that's never the burden of the state when they bring charges against someone, but when you have someone that is accused of killing a loved one being their mother, do you think motive is more important in this particular case?
Yeah, I definitely think it is, because you've got to get motivation as to why you did it, and it leads up to why he would have done what he did to her.
All right, so what are you watching for as we approach the defense opening statement? What would you say?
Man, how are we going to get self-defense in here? How are they going to get rid of all that stuff and say it was self-defense, that he was protecting himself against his mom?
All right, Randolph Rice, we know that you have to get to court. Thank you for being on the show this hour. Coming up next hour, the defense will deliver opening statements in the deadly son murder trial for the 17-year-old Collin Griffith, accused of killing his mother. And also, we are in verdict watch in West Virginia. You're watching Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice. This is Court TV Live. I'm your host for this hour, Matt Johnson, in for Julie Grant. Thanks for being with us. It's a busy day here at Court TV. Our cameras in several courtrooms from coast to coast. In the state of Florida, opening statements are underway in the deadly son murder trial for 17-year-old Collin Griffith. We'll get you back into that courtroom in just a moment. In West Virginia, jury deliberations continue in the Ponzi scheme murder trial for Natalie Cochran. In California, testimony resumes for the alleged victim back on the stand in the trial for ASAP Rocky. And also in California, opening statements in the celebrity hairstylist murder trial for Monica Cimentelli will pick back up. But let's begin this hour in the state of Florida for the trial against Collin Griffith, accused of stabbing his mom to death just 18 months after killing his dad, supposedly in self-defense with the dad. Griffith told police in this case that his mother, quote, fell on the knife during a long fight. Let's get you back into court now for the remainder of the opening statements from the state of Florida.
And she and her husband, you'll hear that they always like to leave right around 5 o'clock or touch before 5 in order to get to church and to talk to people and get a seat. So around 5 o'clock, these two ladies, Sally Bell and Nancy Jones, independently, they're just at their houses. They see Kathy and they see the defendant, and they're having an obvious argument. They also see that Kathy is not doing anything violent to the defendant, but she's animated and the defendant is animated. And then they saw the defendant grab his mom by the hair and start dragging her from the driveway carport into the house. And as that happens, Kathy is telling her son, Collin, stop, let go, let go. Let go of me, you're hurting me. And that's the last that those two neighbors saw of Kathy Griffith. That's the last anyone would see of Kathy Griffith alive. You're going to have an opportunity to see crime scene footage and crime scene video, and you're going to see that the violence continued and started on that day when the defendant grabbed his mom by the hair and dragged her into the house as she was saying, let me go, Collin, you're hurting me. You're going to hear and see that this mom was doing nothing violent or physical to her son, who she took care of and loved. But the defendant thought it was all right to grab his mom by the hair and yank her into the house. Well, what happened on the way to the house? Kathy, one of her AirPods falls out. It falls in the mulch. The defendant drags her into the house, infuriated. Another earpod falls out of her other ear. You're going to see photos that Kathy would wear AirPods a lot to talk on the phone, listen to music. You're going to hear as he dragged her and was furious, you're going to see her AirPod case falls in the living room as he continues to drag her to the back of the house, letting his anger and rage come out. You're going to see the crime scene of that brutal, vicious, savage killing that I mentioned at the beginning of the opening statement. You're going to see pictures of Kathy who came out of her flip-flops as the defendant was attacking her. You're going to see photographs of a charger that is strewn about on the floor from when the defendant was attacking her. You're going to see that same brown leather backpack/purse that was over her shoulder when the defendant was attacking her came crashing to the ground. And you're going to see that it's got blood all over the place. That when he stabbed her, she was still holding it. There's blood on the outside. There's blood on the inside. There's blood on the front, on the back, on the wallet. and you will see firsthand the carnage that Kathy suffered as she laid in the pool of blood that came out of that deep gash in her neck, compliments of her son, Collin Griffith. When all the evidence is in, ladies and gentlemen, you should come to one conclusion. That being that the just verdict is holding the defendant responsible to what he chose to do on September 8th of 2024. And that just verdict, based upon the evidence that you will see and hear, is that you find the defendant guilty of both first-degree murder and kidnapping for the crimes that he perpetrated on his own mother. Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for the opening statements. All powerful there in the state of Florida for the state. Let's bring in our guest for this hour, family law attorney Tangi Bush, watching along with you at home. I'm so excited that you're on the program because what we're dealing with here is a very disturbing case, but one where the relationships is mother and son. We heard a lot about motive. What are your thoughts with what we've heard so far?
Well, like you said, there are a lot of facts in this case that are extremely disturbing. It sounds as if there has been a violent history between the mother and son. It's documented, it's been witnessed. And what's very concerning beyond even that is you have a case, 18 months prior, where the father was killed at the hands of the son in some way or fashion. And this is extremely concerning now that we are using a defense saying that she fell on the knife, which, as I'm hearing described, it was after a very violent struggle. So I'm interested to see how we actually get to the defense of a self-defense here, because it sounds like she was attacked and also stabbed in the way, of course, in which the prosecution is laying it out at our feet at this point.
Yeah, by dragging her, there's going to be witnesses that testify, neighbors that see him pulling her by the hair, and then he calls 911 after all of this. He doesn't want to hear that in court. We already saw that earlier today. What do you expect that defense attorney to say to this jury in opening statement?
I think for the defense, we're going to hear the exact opposite. I always think this is an interesting point in the trial where by the time you hear the prosecution, you're ready to convict, and then the defense comes and gives you a completely different story. Now, I think, of course, certain things are known to us that may not be known to the jury at this point, in which, of course, is violent history, et cetera. But I think the defense is going to paint a picture as if this person is a troubled individual, has had trouble in the past, but that it doesn't necessarily make him a killer. And I think we're probably also going to hear a different description of the fight, especially different from what the prosecution has stated. And I believe that the defense is going to try to lay out as best as they possibly can that this was not necessarily the defendant who went in wanting to hurt their mom, but was unfortunately in a position where an accident occurred. So I think that's what's going to be laid out by the defense.
Right. I think you're right. And that's great analysis.